Welcome to our special Gold Derby Meet the Experts TV Production Design Roundtable. I'm News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and we're here today with Trevor Smith from FX's Fargo, Alex DiGerlando from FX's A Murder at the End of the World, Helen Jarvis from FX's Shogun, and James Merifield from Hulu's We Were the Lucky Ones. Thank you all for joining us and welcome. To start off, the timeframes for when your four projects are set are somewhat all over the map, ranging from centuries ago to World War II to 2019 to mostly the present day. I wondered if designing projects set in a different time presents a greater series of challenges than stories that are more contemporary, or if it just kind of depends. Let's start with you, Trevor.
Well, I think every period show, and every show has a period, brings its own distinct challenges and inspiration for all of us, I might argue. Immediately you put your pin in the chronology map and you start to think about where we are. And in the case of Fargo, we weren't that too far in the past. So I had the luxury of essentially working in working spaces and locations for the most part. But it's funny how the smallest little thing can turn on you. So for instance, a small anecdote on the show that I completed was, we're set in 2019 and one of the key characters is a car dealer, and he's in a Kia dealership, and they went through a major rebrand in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic. So it's a small thing, but on the page, it doesn't read like much until you spend the next 6 months in legal trying to get something sorted out and gathering enough cars that have the old branding and signage and so forth. So it's amazing how sometimes you can't even see it coming, no matter what your period is, how challenging something might appear. So,
Alex, what about you?
Well, period. This show is not really period. There's some time. There is a timeline that's 2017, but the bulk of it is present day. Although, it's like slightly hints at futuristic. The nice thing about doing a period show is that you don't have to deal with the internet, which can be like a real energy suck. And of course, the show is like largely about the internet. I mean, we tried to sidestep a little bit by kind of anticipating what surfing the internet will look like in the not too distant future, which is using an AI assistant to do it for you. And we made a conscious decision to not fill our sets with screens, which is sort of the go-to thing when you think of the internet. But as we're sort of entering a world of wearable computing and AI, that seems to maybe be falling away. And weirdly, when we were making the show, AI wasn't available for the masses yet. And it was like in our last weeks that DALL-E was released into the world. And it really like kind of threw us for a loop, because suddenly the thing that we were making that was sort of like slightly in the future was very much quickly becoming in the past. So I don't know, period is accelerating. It's very volatile right now, I would say.
I thought of that while watching this, Alex, exactly, that, oh my God, the future is now. And how does that affect everything?
Yeah, I mean, the show's, I haven't watched the show recently, but maybe it's pretty dated.
No, actually, to some degree, it's actually incredibly timely because of everything that's happening with AI now. Helen, you were tasked with recreating the 17th century in Japan. Is that a lot more complex than 21st century?
I thought it was quite liberating at first, because I didn't really have anything to fall back on, as it were. I didn't have any sense of what it was going to be, what the architecture was like. So it was starting from scratch, and that soon turned into a lot of discussion, from all the different sources, the resources that we had, the experts, and a lot of the castles and structures that you see in present day Japan. Yes, there are buildings that are hundreds of years old, but a lot of the castles have been burnt down and rebuilt. And I always felt there was room for some level of interpretation. We were reliant heavily on paintings and scrolls, because the biggest pitfall, I think, at first was, if you go on the internet or if you look in books and you're looking at photographs, those photographs are from the 19th century, so you can't really, you start going down a rabbit holes. You think, okay, right, well, let's have some nice paper lanterns and people will be walking around with parasol. No, none of that's right. And so it was what seemed liberating at first started to kind of close in on me. Getting it right was essential for the show. And I do hope, and I hope I get forgiven for the things that aren't right, because inevitably there will be. And that was a fairly constant dialogue that we had collectively, but with our producers and with our sort of cultural advisors. Everybody really wanted to get it right. And I struggle sometimes because I just wanted to kind of break free from that and come up with things that were more cinematic. And so there was a lot of sort of dealing, if you will, trying to sort of win over people to say, look, this is more cinematic. That might be absolutely correct, but this is more cinematic. So yeah, I think it was fascinating doing something I had no experience in prior to this.
Well, I'll just put your mind at ease, Helen, and tell you that I haven't heard anyone say, boy, Shogun sure was great, except for the incorrect production design. I've heard none of that. James, what's your take on period versus contemporary?
Well, I always feel, I mean, with period, actually, I treat them in the same way, really. I think, you start with the references, you start with the research, you go to your, as I said earlier, you go to your library of books, or you scour the internet or something. But I think that comes a time where you just have to go back to the script and you dig deep into those characters, and then you throw away all the reference, you throw away all the textbooks, and you just then respond and respect what is written on the page. And then, I think it just flows. And I think obviously that comes with a deal of confidence and self-assurance in your knowledge of the period as a starting point. But I think it becomes very much, about what is the scene about. And I think you can be forgiven so easily for a 19th century chair in a 16th century set, because if you've got the right, if you've got the right nuance, the right shape, the right silhouette, it's fine. It works. So I would say throw it all away and then just let it come from the gut and the heart.
Let's go to another question, all of you. I've heard some production designers say that they don't want their work to be obvious and stand out because it can kind of prove a distraction. You just want things to blend in. Given that, what's the best compliment someone can give you about what you do? Helen?
Well, it would be exactly that. I think would be to say that it's hard to pinpoint the sets. The background in so many of our scenes is mist and rain and people moving in the background, activity, all of that. I just, it's such a composite. It's very hard to really pinpoint. I think that the design, certain of the sets in Shogun are quite showy just by the very nature of them. They are designed to show off. That's what they were built for, the tigers, for example. And so it was very exciting doing those sets, and then trying to do sets like the fishing village where everything is kind of, there's a certain homogeneous quality to it, which I think, is hopefully that's the best I can hope for, I think, is to say that the sets don't overwhelm, they support.
Alex, what's the greatest praise you've ever heard?
I mean, usually when people ask, like, where is that hotel, or like in the case of Beasts of the Southern Wild, people thought that the bathtub was a real place, like, then you've done what you set out to do. It's also like a little bit, I mean, you want to be like, you don't know what I did to make this thing, but you keep that to yourself, and you just say thanks. I would say that's probably the biggest, and also I would say I've had a couple of instances where actors have come to me and said how the set really helped them get into character, and that's a really cool thing, because we put, I mean, all of you guys, I'm sure do the same thing. We put like insane detail into these sets that the audience is never going to see, but we do that for the actors so that they're fully immersed in the environment, and therefore they can play off of it, and it helps them. So, and I've had, many times actors come up to me and thank me for that, which always feels good.
Wow, hearing that from the actors, that has to I would imagine that absolutely is the ultimate. Because
Well, yeah, they're seeing it like way up, to everyone else, it's just an image on a screen, but to them, it's a thing that they live with. So
this is their home while they're doing this, while they're making the project. How about you, James? What's a particularly flattering remark about your designs that you've heard?
Well, I just on the last project, we were the lucky ones. The writer, we had just built the Kirk's apartment set, and it was the first day of principal photography. And Georgia Hunter, the writer of the novel, was on set, and of course, it's her family story. So it's very, very, in her whole remit and her whole person. And she came on set, and she walked the set. She walked around the bedrooms, the living room, the dining room, the kitchen, and she was incredibly emotional. She started to cry, and and she said, "This is bringing back all, everything that I understand and know about my family is in this home that you've created, that we've, not just me, my entire wonderful team created." So that was a very telling moment, and I think you've succeeded when you know that it's right. And what was just being discussed then by Alex, the fact that the actors feel at home in their environments is a great compliment.
And while literally the mother of the project, having an emotional reaction to the space that you're in.
Well, she's the granddaughter.
Possibly get better than that.
No, she's the granddaughter to Addie, who is the lead in the film. Yeah. So it was quite a moment. So
wow,
very special.
How about you, Trevor?
Well, certainly when I think of compliments and a level of satisfaction that we gain as designers, I agree with all the anecdotes beforehand in terms of relationships with actors, that invisibility, authenticity, quality. Whether you've got writers or you're grounding people's imaginations, they're all super satisfying. But I think my spin might be a cinematographic one, wherein the DP, who is our biggest ally, when they walk onto a set that maybe they've only seen in a SketchUp model or in some photographs or some updates as we build these things, whether it's an interior or a location build, when they frequently told me that the set, the positioning, the angle of light, the topographic considerations made them put cameras in places they never even imagined. And that I imagine myself as a filmmaker more than I am a designer, when I'm always making the movie I want in my head as I go anyhow. And I always anticipate where I think the camera's going to be. And I feel so satisfied, and vice versa, when I get positive feedback from a DP that we found really interesting and inspiring grand or small places to put the camera that we didn't even see coming. So when a shot becomes better than we imagined, I think that's the stuff of magic. So
absolutely. Finally, we're just going to do a quick final question here for you all. It seems that production design, to my mind, is particularly cool and creative way to make a living. You get to craft worlds and tell a character's life story, sometimes in a single room. Give me one or two quick lines. What's your favorite part of your job, Trevor?
I think the favorite part of my job is the conceptual phase, when we're most inspired in prep, when we're gathered with the other creatives and imagining. It's like kids in a sandbox. And I recently heard a Jack Fisk interview where he said, it's like, I get to revisit myself building forts as a child. And I think that's it for me. I really am a farm kid at heart, and I love spending other people's money and realizing ideas. It's the realization part that I actually find the most fruitful for me.
It's a great big sandbox. Helen, what's the greatest thing about being a production designer? For your first job, now that you've done it after being an art director for so long.
I still always absolutely enjoy the conceptual work, and I love sketching, and I love the sort of the probing into the unknown, as it were, you know, having an idea and then spending an entire weekend drawing something that they realize that's not the right thing. Now I know what not to do. And so I like that process a lot. But I have to say, I absolutely love getting into the workshop at 10 to 7 every morning, having a cup of coffee with the paint department, with the construction and greens, and just going through that process, just analyzing where we're going every day, all the building blocks. I really absolutely enjoy that part. I think perhaps most of all.
How about you, James?
Well, certainly for one, the collaborative element of a team of artists and people coming together to create this, to bring this script to life. But on another sort of level, one of my favorite moments is when we've wrapped on the set, and people always say, "Are you sad to see the set? You know, the end to a set?" And I'm saying, no, I'm so happy. I can't wait to see it go in a skip, because, you know, you then know you've done your job. Hopefully it's in the camera and you move on to the next. So there's something about the saying goodbye that is also then saying hello to the next. So that's exciting.
You have to leave one house and move to another one.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
As it were. Alex, how about you?
Well, I just love what this work exposes one to. Between research and location scouting, like you get a script often about a topic that you've never know nothing about, as Helen has been talking about, and then suddenly in a matter of months you become an expert on that thing.
Yeah.
You know, and often sometimes it's things that you don't, that your own personal interest wouldn't have drawn you to, and you then discover something that you love. Like I did this movie Ocean's 8, which took place at the Met Gala. I never gave one thought about the Met Gala. Now I know more about it than anyone could hope to imagine, but it's fascinating, actually. So I love that, and I love the location scouting, because you get access to places that, you know, you wouldn't normally get access to. Like this afternoon, in the morning, I was scouting a 1700s farmhouse in Katona, New York. And then I was, later in the day, I was at Philip Johnson's pool room in the old Four Seasons restaurant in the Seagram building. And I can just like walk around and like walk into, you know, they cleared out the ladies' lounge, which is not a place that I would get to go to, but it's got this beautiful silk fabric on the walls and this custom furniture. Like, to me, and it's not just the fancy locations, it's the grimy locations that are so cool too. People open their homes to us and we get to walk around, and not to say that everyone's home is grimy. That's not what I meant, but you get what I'm saying. Like there's just the full spectrum of the world is suddenly open to you, and you see things that you wouldn't get to see otherwise. So anyway, that's
Very well put. And that's what I love about my job, is I get to find out what production designers do, and I would never have any clue without being able to talk to you four fine professionals. We're going to leave things there. Once again, our esteemed panelists have been Trevor Smith for Fargo, Alex DiGerlando for A Murder at the End of the World, Helen Jarvis for Shogun, and James Merifield for We Were the Lucky Ones. Best of luck to the four of you this Emmy season, and thanks for joining us today at Gold Derby.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye. Nice to meet you.
Bye-bye.